This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Hey, this is Brian Peña. I always join the Vito podcast, the best podcast in the United States.
And Doc, as you know, one of our fine partners at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network is The Athletic, which is premium coverage for passionate Detroit sports fans. And listeners of this fine episode of Tigers Talk can get 30% off, yes, 30% off the first year of an annual subscription to The Athletic by visiting theathletic.com/DSP today. And welcome to the latest, the freshest edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I am your host, Vito Geronimo Chirco, along to my usual sidekick and broadcast partner in fun. That is the Doc from Doc and Jack, John Charles McElroon. John, how are you doing?
Vito, what an interesting start to the recording. I wish sometimes we could broadcast all the behind-the-scenes fun that we have, the pre-show meetings, the banter.
A lot of stuff going on before this podcast recording, huh?
Very interesting stuff, but I'm greatly looking forward to talking to you about Tigers baseball. I had the opportunity to enjoy the finer things in life. I enjoyed going to the Detroit Tigers game versus Cleveland Indians on Sunday, and I was able to watch the game from a suite. Unfortunately, it was Corey Kluber versus Lewicki, and so going into that contest, many people, my family, even my nephew realized that the matchup was going to be really tough and challenging for the Tigers, and Corey Kluber delivered. Man, when we talk about him, you just see a guy that has command of his pitches, and he worked the Detroit Tigers. I mean, by the sixth inning, he was only at 60 pitches, and so we had a good time. And stay tuned later in the podcast. I'll share a story of Doc stepping up and being able to meet somebody higher up in the Detroit Tigers organization, and it was really cool. My nephew was thrilled, and it was a fun time for him, and enjoying his 8th birthday at Comerica Park made it a fun experience. Unfortunately, the Tigers lost the series to the Indians, but many people were not surprised. The Indians are just a step above the Detroit Tigers. We can get into a lot, though, in regards to Nick Castellanos and his play in right field, some of the struggles in that bullpen, how the Tigers can go forward when some of the players who have been injured return, because some of the pitchers who have been starting can then be moved back to the bullpen. That can help out, and the Detroit Tigers have been playing well. A much-needed day off for them this past Monday. They had been playing a long stretch of games. I think they played a stretch of like 18 games in 17 days or something like that, and they had played a lot of baseball, and a much-needed day off for them. I'm looking forward to their series versus the Twins. I can't wait to talk baseball with you, brother. What's been going on with you?
Well, I was going to say, where the heck is Zuzu? Let's celebrate his birthday inside the Sterling Heights studio. I mean, maybe we'll have him on in the future this summer while he's off of school. He's a young lad, so I know he has summer vacation right now. Would love to showcase to him our talents. Beautiful, mighty talents at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Talk some Tigers baseball with him. Find out who his favorite Tiger is, what he enjoys the most about the Tigers this season, and that kind of deal, Doc.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty of some important topics in regards to maybe a big club calling for Matt Boyd, maybe interested in taking him off our hands, maybe making a trade offer, something that was funny that occurred at the ballpark. You know, it's fun. People were bantering. You know, I went with family, and we were talking, having a good time. Not a lot of people were actually really into the game per se, but I was definitely checking things out, looking at the nuance of some of the position players, how Victor was looking, how Nick Castellanos was going to play in right field. Of course, he made a mistake again, but something that was hilarious is each player that walks up to bat has a walk-up song, and most of the time it's a little bit Latino or hip-hop. Do you know what Nick Castellanos walked up to? A lot of people were buzzing about it and talking about it because it made no sense. He walked up to Alicia Keys Falling the whole game, and ladies, even Zuzu said, that's kind of soft. And we all said...
From an 8-year-old. If an 8-year-old is saying that, you got something wrong with you and your walk-up song,
You can't walk up to Alicia Keys Falling
in and out of love, right? Doesn't she sing that, those lyrics? So
and
that's feminine. That's not a feminine, but it's like a soft song, like a soft, sensual song. It's not like a motivational, get ready to take an A-B kind of song. Not at all.
Yeah. Some people tweeted us and said that, it's elevator music. It's not hype music. It was really unusual for him to come out to that, and I put a video out that people like, but isn't that a little bit weird to come out to that song?
But honestly, I could see myself coming out to some Miley Cyrus, Party in the
goodness.
USA, or something really. It would be a joke, though. It would be sarcastic. He's falling from Alicia Keys because of the fact that it's sarcasm. Like, he's using some sarcasm there and having that as his walk-up song.
Oh, my goodness.
I got to believe that's why.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
let's see. Can you imagine this? Nick Castellanos, up to bat. When you play, it's worse.
Alicia Keys. And she's on the piano. This gets me going, baby. Maybe not for a baseball game or baseball AB, but maybe it gets Nick going for something else, and he starts thinking of something else, and it locks him in at the plate, too.
Oh, let's feel it. Let's see if we can feel it. Let's just hear this.
Feel it a little bit, baby. Come on now. Feel it.
No. No, Nick, it's a major violation. I hope he changes that quick. I mean, on our Twitter page, @Detroit Podcast, we were like, absolutely not. Unacceptable. The kids didn't like it. The females didn't like it. I felt like that's not the necessary theme you want to bring to the ballpark with that. So change it right away, Nick C. Unacceptable. Thumbs down here from the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Alicia Keys as a walk-up song. Unacceptable, especially to what you said, Miley Cyrus, unacceptable. It's got to be hip-hop. It's got to be upbeat, maybe a little bit of a Latin
hip-hop,
flair.
Rihanna.
Yeah.
I would have Rihanna. Disturbia. Something from Riri.
Not bad. I think, though, even my nephew has a walk-up song in his travel baseball league, and he has a
And
fun
what
time
is
with
it, by the way?
Oh, he has Centuries. You will remember me for centuries. So, very interesting
See,
stuff
that
there.
doesn't get me going. Rihanna does. I need a Rihanna song. Anything Riri. Play for me, baby. And Big V is up to bat and locked in.
What'd you make of the week for the Detroit Tigers? I think it was up and down week. I know you had the series lost to the Cleveland Indians. So, what did you make of the last 7 days for the Detroit Tigers?
Well, they lost 2 out of 3 against the Red Sox on the road in Beantown. They lost 2 out of 3 over the weekend at Comerica against the Indians. So against good ball clubs, they're not winning many ball games, right? I mean, that's really the case with the Tigers right now. A team that's been mediocre all year long, hovering around 500. Not a team that really is going to exceed the 500 mark this season, moving forward specifically. And I just don't see it happening because they are what they are. They have a guy like Artie Lewicki have to go on the mound Sunday, throw against Corey Kluber. And really, you don't like your odds when Artie Lewicki is your starting pitcher versus Corey Kluber of all pitchers on the Indians pitching staff. You just don't want Artie Lewicki going up against anybody, regardless of who it is, but especially when it is Corey Kluber, the Klubot. And Klubot was dealing. Artie Lewicki was not dealing, but that's what we've come to expect out of Artie Lewicki, who really is a 4A pitcher. He's a guy that throws a straight fastball. As my brother Dominic Chirco, who's been on Tigers Talk in the past, he has pinpointed that to me. And I was watching closely Artie Lewicki on TV Sunday, and it looked like that to me. And he was mixing in some off-speed stuff, but after a while, those off-speed pitches, batters adjust to that and start hitting those pitches as well and start hitting those a long ways away, for long distances and out of the ballpark. So the thing is, when you're other stuff, too, isn't that effective, and the cheddar that you throw is straight and isn't extremely fast on the radar gun, well, guess what that amounts to? It amounts to typically long days for a starting arm such as Artie Lewicki, which Sunday was, maybe not from the start, but for the majority of the game, Artie Lewicki was not grooving. And realistically, that's what you can expect from Artie Lewicki the rest of his major league career, which might not be too prolonged at this point because he's not a starting arm. He's a 4A pitcher, a guy that's up right now in the big league club and was up last year and made a starter too as a spot starter because of the fact that the Tigers don't have great depth when it comes to their starting rotation. And then guys like Francisco Liriano and Jordan Zimmerman are on the DL. Daniel Norris is out right now. So you have to have a guy like Artie Lewicki to throw some innings. And it allows you not to use your bullpen to overtax it. So I guess in so many words, that's why Artie Lewicki is almost up by default. And if there were better options or if guys were healthy, guess what? Artie Lewicki would be way down in AAA and would not even be, I think, thought of as a starting pitcher option.
So credit to Detroit Sports Podcast and the Tigers Talk Podcast. We were accurate. You and I kind of discussed how many wins the Tigers would have versus the Red Sox, and we were both correct that they would lose the first 2 games, and the Matt Boyd appearance would be the only appearance that they would win.
Well,
and that's what happened.
You said that. I said 2 out of 3. So I'll own up to that. Have to admit
Wrong.
it. You got it right. I got it wrong.
It just kind of felt like the Red Sox were a lot better. Did you see that pitch that was grooved to J.D. Martinez? Oh, my God, he destroyed the baseball. I think we were wrong, though. I think he only had the 1 home run in the series, right?
In the first game, too, remember? Then we thought he was going to hit a ton of them. He has, or at least at one point, had 21 Major League leading home run total. So J.D. has killed it with the Red Sox so far this year, too, Doc.
But when you look at that Red Sox team, holy cow, that's an assembled team. They can do a lot of damage. And it was nice of them to win the series finale, not get swept, and then you come home versus the Indians. It was nice also to see at least Jimmer Candelario with that walk-off home run, a great game, something where a guy like Jimmer can contribute, and when you can get a win like that in that fashion, it was nice to see. I know it was tough winning only one game in that series, but hey, it's the Cleveland Indians, and that's where you're trying to be, and the Tigers aren't there yet, but it's nice to see them be gritty. It's nice to see them compete, and we can also dig into a lot of storylines regarding what has to happen, and unfortunately, this isn't news. Many people realize it. You could improve the squad defensively if Nick Castellanos is not in right field. It's just not going to work. Unfortunately, he's not getting better, and when you see what he does out there, he struggles to get his glove on the ball. He struggles with reading plays correctly. He's not an outfielder. I know they're trying to make him one, but when you see what he's doing out there, each and every game he's making one mistake. And one play in particular, he missed the cutoff man at second base by a good 10 feet. And it was just a simple routine play, but all that happened in which that play developed was it was a basic single, ball to Nick Castellanos. He runs and gets it, and his job is to throw it to second base, and he airmailed it by a good 10 feet. Everybody was like, whoa. And then there was another play where, you know, he was trying to get the ball. He puts his glove down, and the ball just scoots through.
Went right underneath.
And he stood there, and everybody was looking like,
and it went right to the wall.
Move.
And he misjudged it completely. Cannot judge a ball off the bat yet accurately enough. And he looks lost out there at times, including on Sunday with that play that you're talking about where he just totally misplayed the ball and let it go underneath his legs all the way to the wall in right field. How do you allow that to happen when you're a major league outfielder, Doc?
What do we do? It's a bad situation. It's not getting better. Gardenhire seems to be patient with some veterans like Victor Martinez. I know slickly he moved him down in the lineup to fifth. I know you noticed that, but it doesn't seem to be helping the ball club versus better teams when you're giving away bases and Nick Castellanos is struggling so much in the outfield.
So Jeimer Candelario has played, I think, not superbly at third base defensively, but good enough at third base and better than Nick Castellanos in the past when Castellanos was the starting third baseman every day for the Tigers. Now he's in right field. It looks lost, like I said, but I think at this point, because you have Miguel Cabrera at first base and Victor Martinez at DH and other guys that need spot starts at first base, such as John Hicks, every so often, well, because of that, you can't move Nick Castellanos back to the infield. To third, Candelario is there. He's going to stay there. To first base because Cabby is there. You also have Hicks there. And then DH, well, you have at bats that you need to get VMart, in for at DH. So he's a DH guy. You don't have that spot really for Nick Castellanos to utilize right now because it is Victor Martinez's spot in the everyday lineup. Even though really he's not an everyday DH at this point, still, you need him there. You need to spell Cabrera at first and put Cabrera at DH sometimes to get him away from first base and to kind of get him mentally right when maybe he needs a day off and you don't give him a formal day off, but you give him that day away from playing first base. So that's the thing with Castellanos right now. I think you're stuck with him in right field for the time being. Now, moving into next season when Victor Martinez's contract, it expires, well, then you have that spot opened up at DH, and even Miguel Cabrera. I think you could transition him to DH more full-time and open up that first base spot for Nick Castellanos. And I would like to see that because he's a guy that can hit, so you want to stick his bat, keep his bat in the lineup, but when he's such a void out in right field, you really can't keep him out there. And he has looked bad way too many times this season. So luckily his bat has made up for it a lot this year. Candelario has looked good with the bat like you had noted already in this week's podcast, Doc. He had the game-winning hit on Saturday in a marathon game. There was a rain delay to start the game. My mom and dad and brother went to the game on Saturday. I was going to go myself for my birthday, went to the wedding for my friend instead, but we have a 4-game ticket package, and June 9th was one of the games we got in the ticket package. So they were there. They waited it out for a little bit, saw 5 innings, and then got the hell out of there. They weren't staying until it was 9, 10 o'clock when the game finished because it went into extras. Candelario got that game-winning hit. But once again, I wasn't there. But I guess the premise of my conversation piece here is that Candelario has hit. You got to keep him at third base. He's a third baseman at this point, and you don't have a spot open up at first base for Castellanos, which means Casty with Candy at third, Cabrera at first, Vimar at DH, Cabby needing at bats at DH. Castellanos has to stay at right field, has to stay in that position for the foreseeable future, at least until next season.
Okay, Vito, a point of contention. We now have a situation in which we can criticize a little bit and critique Ron Gardenhire. And I know I texted you. I said, look, there was a game in which Joe Jimenez was dealing. And I think it was versus the Indians or the Red Sox. You'll clarify for me. But he was dealing. He was playing very well. He was, throwing his fastball effectively, getting guys out. And Ron Gardenhire is reluctant to let Joe Jimenez pitch the extra inning. And so what happens? Shane Greene comes on and gives up a home run. And it's unfortunate in that Shane Greene is the established closer, and Ron Gardenhire wants to establish him as the closer. But if you see Joe Jimenez and he's dealing, you can extend him out just a little bit. You don't have to be formulaic and have Jimenez only pitch the 8th, and then Shane Greene, the closer, comes in the 9th. If you notice that Jimenez was that dominant like he was in that performance, why take him out? Why be so stubborn and be so formulaic? It's happened quite a bit now in which you make mistakes in terms of going out there and taking out a pitcher who's hot in exchange for a guy who doesn't get the job done. And Tigers fans are sick of seeing that. Many people want Jimenez to be the closer. They think that he's ready for the job. Now, Shane Greene's done a decent job, but he has struggled as of late with giving up home runs.
Well, 2 key stats here to bring up as part of Vito's notebook a little bit early on in this week's edition of Tigers Talk. But Shane Greene, now to your point, Doc, has allowed 6 home runs already this season, matching the amount of long balls that he allowed all of last season. And the 6 home runs he's permitted up to this point in the season also is more than he permitted during the 2016 campaign in totality, when he allowed a mere 3 big flies. So Shane Greene has been very susceptible thus far this season to giving up the long ball, and a little bit more, or too susceptible for my liking, with him being the closer for the Tigers right now.
Now, that was Friday's game versus the Indians. He allowed a Jason Kipnis 3-run homer, breaking a 1-1 tie, and giving the Indians the opening series win. See, that
so he
game
hasn't
right
been good
there?
enough in that closer role. And then Joe Jimenez has been hot, mighty hot, over a 15-game stretch now. Here's another stat from Vito's notebook this week, Doc. He is in the midst of a terrific 15-game stretch. Since allowing 2 earned runs versus the Texas Rangers May 8th, the 23-year-old righty, which it's just stunning that he's only 23 years old. He's younger than me. I'm 25, just turned 25. He is 23, Joe Jimenez. The righty has allowed just 1 earned run in 14 1/3 innings, equating to a .63 earned run average in his last 15 appearances out of the Tigers' pen. As a Tigers' pretty much steady setup man. And now should he be utilized as a Tigers' closer moving forward in maybe a more pressure-filled situation at times at least. But then you can also argue that at times in the 8th inning, he's pitching in higher leverage situations than Shane Greene is in the 9th. So really, do you want to change the rules and flip-flop the 2 guys? Shane Greene to the 8th, Jimenez to the 9th? I'm not too sure about that right now.
Here's what I'm saying. Greene was trying to keep the game tied. Michael Fulmer, in that opening game, pitched 7 strong innings, only allowing 1 run on 5 hits and no walks. So you call on Jimenez, he does the job. All I'm saying is you don't have to give Joe Jimenez the closer role right now. All I'm saying is from time to time, if you see Jimenez go out there and he's dealing and he's got the stuff and he's bringing it, he's getting guys out, you don't have to be formulaic. You don't have to take him out after just 1 inning. Maybe extend him out a little bit, because if you get the game into extra innings, then you have a chance maybe to use Shane Greene. You have a chance to win in a walk-off fashion or things like that. But in that situation, it was a mistake. Shane Greene went out there and gave up a massive 3-run home run. You lose the opening game. And I think in that situation, many people would have felt like, you know what? You would have been okay had you have Jimenez go out 1 more inning. Just from time to time. Not all the time. I know there's a lot of second-guessing that goes on with the bullpen. But when you got a guy who's effective, maybe you can work him out a little bit. Maybe give him 2 innings in a situation in a 1-1 game versus a division rival.
So I'll just say this. But Joe Jimenez is 23 years old. And I think because he is that young, that youthful, and early on in his major league career, I don't think Ron Gardenhire really wants to stretch him out over the course of more than 1 inning. I don't think he wants him to face more than, or get 3 outs, not to get 4 outs. I don't think he really wants him to stay out there for 4 outs. Not those 4 out, even if he was a closer, not those 4 out save situations. I don't think he would be utilized in that kind of a role. And thus far, I think you've seen that out of Gardenhire. That's been his practice with Jimenez, and that he's used him for the 1 inning at a time, each and every single appearance Jimenez has made, because of the fact he doesn't want to expand him or extend him too much and overexpose him to major league talent and allow him then to break down as the season goes on. He wants to keep him fresh for the remainder of the season. And because of that, Doc, I think you want to see him pitch in this role, which he has thrived in so far, not being overexposed and only facing, or getting 3 outs, thus being used for 1 inning at a time. And I think that's the right role right now to use Jimenez in.
All right, Vito, time for our first timeout. What do we got going on in the second half of this podcast?
Well, I think we got to touch upon the Tigers-Twins series this week as well. Look at that a little bit. And a few other news and notes from my notebook this week.
All right, stay with us. You're listening to the Tigers Talk podcast on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And Doc, as you know, one of our fine partners at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network is the Detroit Sports Commission. And I love everybody at the DSC, and they do some great work and have been bringing marquee events to the Metro Detroit area since 2001. And I'm talking about hundreds and hundreds of national and international amateur sporting events. And to follow the DSC and to find out about all the great marquee events they are bringing to our very region, please follow the Detroit Sports Commission on Twitter and on Instagram at DET Sports. Also, follow the Zenith Prep Kickoff Classic at DET-PKC, taking place August 23rd through 25th at Wayne State University this summer. And with all that being said, also make sure to check out the Detroit Sports Commission's very fine website at detroitsports.org. And Doc, the Detroit Sports Commission is a very fine organization. Potomatic is a very fine hosting site. And Matt Boyd has been a very fine left-handed starting arm thus far this season. A guy that's been now talked about a little bit in trade rumors because of his success thus far this year.
Yeah, well-deserved. I think Matt Boyd has come around, somebody that we can count on to get outs, and he's a gamer. Even though he might struggle from time to time, he comes back. And it really kind of all started. Remember last year, he was so close to that no-hitter. He was dealing. It kind of came out of nowhere, right?
He did towards the end of the season, like his second to last start, or his last start of the season.
It was an amazing performance. And since then, you can see the confidence growing. He's mixing and matching his pitches. His location is superb. And even though he doesn't, blow guys away, he's pitching to contact, and he's getting wins, and he's helping out. And one big way you can help out the ball club is if you can maybe get yourself slotted into being a trade chip. And what a trade chip it could be if the team that was rumored to be wanting to call, the New York Yankees, call. How should the Tigers handle the rumors and maybe speculation that Matt Boyd is somebody that the New York Yankees have targeted? That would be great because of the fact that, hey, you know what? They might be willing to give up some pieces. They might be willing to give up some prospects that might be coveted by the Detroit Tigers.
Well, he's still relatively young. He's cheap under club control. And the thing is, the Tigers have a plethora right now of starting arms and bullpen arms in their farm system that will be up in the next 2 to 3 years. So with all that being said, because they have this extreme depth at pitcher, I would say that Matthew Boyd is, I think he is a guy that you look at trading. I think he is a guy, if you get the right offer, I think you do indeed deal him. He's disposable. I think he is because of all those factors added up. And he's been great this year, which really makes me want to argue the point that the Tigers should keep him because you want him to be a part of this team when it gets good again in 2 to 3 years because he's this guy that can keep them in contention as a strong lefty in the Tigers rotation every 5th day, be that number 3, effective number 3, at least if not a strong number 2. And you would like that as a lefty to have that lefty presence towards the top or at the top of your rotation every 5th day. So I would like him to be a part of the Tigers rotation in the near and long-term future, 2 to 3 years from now, that means as well. But you also have to look at it from a larger perspective. And in the grand scheme of things, he's been so darn effective every 5th day thus far and been the Tigers' best starting pitcher. Because of that, I think you have to say and argue that, well, maybe the Tigers should look to deal him. And if the right team comes a-calling, guess what? You deal the guy because you want to get that nice plethora of prospects from a club that is interested in acquiring the services of Matt Boyd.
Yeah, it's been really refreshing to see a guy come in and just handle his business. Go out there. And you know who else I've been impressed by? Mike Fiers. I feel like, you know what, a guy throwing like 92 miles an hour, he's crafty. And I love when they show the Fox tracks and they show the pitch sequencing. And I love the fact that, you know what, his pitches are outside, inside, high, low, all over the place. And he utilizes 4 to 5 pitches effectively. Mike Fiers, I feel like, has been a pleasant addition to the Detroit Tigers. I like his fireness too. Hey, you throw at Giancarlo Stanton and he flexes on you and he's walking up there that first base, walking up that first baseline and he's looking at you. He didn't back down. I feel like Mike Fiers was ready to throw down, and I like to see that, a guy that's gritty and a gamer, a really solid pickup that could also maybe be turned around you're looking at potentially Boyd, Liriano, and Fiers being let go around the trade deadline. And that would be interesting to see if the Tigers, if they deconstruct or sell, per se, if they do it all, little by little, or if they do it all at once, in a 2-week span by the trade deadline, how many of the players realistically could be let go from this team? And I'm thinking potentially you could let go of 6 to 7 players at the trade deadline. A lot of interesting times for Al Avila and what he can, really look to in terms of, scouring the landscape regarding what's out there. Because what was the knock last year? It seemed like he traded with teams that were lowly ranked in their minor league system,
the
D-backs,
right? And the Halos way too often. Then he dealt with the Cubs and got a good deal getting Jeimer Candelario. So I like that deal. He won that deal by far. Remember, he dealt Alex Avila, who's hit like below 200, below the Mendoza line with the D-backs thus far this year on a 1-year deal with the D-backs. And then Justin Wilson with the Cubs has done nothing, really, of high relevance. So really, the Tigers won that deal big time. And now you look at their trade pieces this year, their most tradable asset perhaps is Matt Boyd because Michael Fulmer has struggled, really, for a large amount of the season. Shane Greene definitely has, too, as a Tigers closer, so you can't really rely on those guys being great trade pieces right now. Fulmer a bit more, obviously, because he has been that ace of the Tigers' rotation, had a very good stand-outish season last year, a good start to this year, and you got to believe, had a nice start Friday against the Indians, too, so you would think that he's bound to rebound, let's say, and I think he will do that as the season does progress. So I think Boyd right now, you could argue, is the biggest, most valuable trade piece the Tigers do possess because he's only 27. You look at his WAR. Actually, according to BaseballReference.com, his wins above replacement total thus far, Doc, is 2.1. When your WAR is above 2 already, at this point in the season, not even at the halfway point yet, that tells you he's been extremely relevant and effective for the Tigers every 5th day. So he's a very tradable asset right now, and he doesn't hit arbitration for a while, until 2020, it says here. Doesn't become a free agent at this point until 2023. So when Miguel Cabrera becomes a free agent in 2023, that's when Matthew Boyd becomes a free agent in 2023. So under club control and cheaply for all this time now with the Tigers, it makes him a very tradable asset to all these outside clubs that are looking for starting pitching help.
What did you make of the week for Michael Fulmer? Great start versus the Indians. When you evaluate Michael Fulmer, if he can have consistent performances like that versus the Indians, that'll be much needed for the Detroit Tigers. And I'm just hoping now going forward that Fulmer can reach a level of consistency. It's hard sometimes. When you're a second-year player, there's more film on you. You got to locate your pitches. And when you struggle, here's the thing. In baseball, it's not rocket science. If you're not able to get ahead in counts and you're constantly facing 2-1 counts and you got to throw strikes, these guys can hit you. And what Michael Fulmer's got to consistently do is find the strike zone and be able to be consistent with it, not be erratic, not give up key walks at bad times. And that's what started to happen in several performances. Now, versus the Indians, he was lights out. It looked like the old Michael Fulmer. Are you looking forward to seeing a positive trend with Michael Fulmer? Or are you still taking a wait-and-see approach? Because we are a little bit jittery, a little bit nervous here on the network regarding what Michael Fulmer was, because he was at a position where he could have been the biggest trade chip in all of Major League Baseball. And when you struggle like he has the early start of 2018, elevated ERA, kind of getting knocked around a little bit, not being able to go deeper into games, it's a little bit concerning.
Well, his ERA and his FIP have been above 4 for the majority of the season. His FIP is his fielding independent pitching, which really is the best gauge of a pitcher's success in a single season. So Fulmer has not been an ace-caliber arm for the Tigers this season consistently. Now, he's had a string of starts that have been more effective than others in the past this season, but overall-wise, he has not been ultra-effective and good enough to claim him as a Tigers ace. He has not been that caliber of an arm as he was last year for the majority of last season, especially after JV was dealt. And in 2016, he won the American League Rookie of the Year award because he was so standoutish. And last year, for the most part, he was standoutish as well, showed the velocity of the ability to throw other pitches and to locate with other pitches and to strike out batters to a high degree. This year, not as much, and too many innings, one inning per start where he's been susceptible to being blown up, to just losing his control and losing himself and getting hit around and losing his effectiveness. It's been like one inning per start on average this season where he's tailed off mightily with his production, not allowing him subsequently to go deep into ball games consistently this year up to this point. Friday night was nice against a good Indians ball club, but they're not the greatest hitting ball club either. Still, you have to take that as a positive, and you have to believe that he will be trending upward. I think you will see a positive string of starts out of Michael Fulmer in the very near future. But almost, as a Tigers fan, and in a guilty fashion, I'm thinking right now, because he has been so stinko more often than not this year, Doc, it kills his trade value. And as a Tigers fan, I'm thinking to myself in a guilty fashion once again that, well, because of that, they're not going to trade him now, which is good. They get to keep Michael Fulmer because his trade value isn't sky high like it once was going into the season and in the offseason as well, specifically. So because of all those factors added up, Doc, what they're going to get right now for Michael Fulmer leading up to that July 31 non-waiver trade deadline is not going to be as extremely high of value. So I think you're almost forced to keep Michael Fulmer going into the trade deadline and thus going into next season, going into the offseason at least, after this season. So I think all of those things are a reason to almost be positive in a guilty way for the Tigers and Michael Fulmer, knowing that they kind of have to keep him now, because if they were thinking of dealing him, I don't think you can as much right now because, like I said, I don't think his trade value is nearly as high as it was coming into this season.
Now let's shift gears a little bit. Let's look at a performance that has kind of raised eyebrows. A lot of talk regarding Casey Mize and his struggle as of late. And I know people were sensitive. He's number one pick, so now all eyes are going to be on Casey Mize. And it looks like from the path of Faedo that what's likely going to happen is after the season, they're going to shut down Mize, let him relax a little bit, and bring him up slowly. And I fully agree. I feel like, you know what? Casey Mize has thrown a plethora of innings. He has struggled a little bit. His fastball speed now is down a little bit. People are noticing, okay, you know what? When you pitch all year long and you're a pitcher, you got to be just a little bit careful, not overwork people. I mean, I know we live in an instant gratification society. He's 22 years old, a college senior. People just want to, have him sign a huge deal, become the number one pick, play college ball, and then jump right to the major leagues and contribute. That's very rare. But I do agree with those that have said, look, if you're special, why not? You know who was special? Former pitcher Justin Verlander. When he came up right away, he was special. And so I can understand the expectation, but the Tigers have shown that they're going to take their time with Casey Mize, and they're not going to rush him up, and I'm fully supporting of that. Shut him down. We don't need to see him this year. We don't need to see him in a September call-up.
Not this year. Not necessary with this current ball club.
Just relax. I think his fastball will elevate next year. His arm is a little bit dead. And I know people were looking at it going, oh, you know what? Auburn was struggling to qualify for the World Series, and I think they lost in the Super Regional, and they were not as good. And I think people were also saying, somebody that you could have drafted last year was performing amazing, and they were ranting and raving about somebody that the Tigers could have drafted, and it's unfortunate to do that. Just look, we got Casey Mize. He's the number one pick. He's going to be among the plethora of arms that have been drafted and have been picked up and placed in the minor leagues. It's a nice thing to have. Let's not just start the pressure train on Casey Mize just yet. Give him a good 4 or 5 months. But my goodness, people were like, oh my gosh, the person last year you could have had, look what he's doing now. He's outstanding. He's better than Casey Mize. And I'm like, just relax. Let the man do his thing.
Well, there is a huge pessimist in me, but I'm going to be the eternal optimist here regarding this conversation piece and bring up to you guys all the names that the Tigers have in their farm system that are pitchers. I mean, this is a big thing to make you feel positive about the Tigers' current state and to kind of get off of Casey Mize, get off his back, let him go, let him thrive. He's a youngster. He'll be all right. Okay, so let's relax, as Aaron Rodgers once said, famously. RELAX. Relax, everybody out there, about Casey Mize and what you perceive as struggles from him. He's still a young right-handed arm, and you can't imagine or predict right now guaranteed automatic success. You're not going to see success from a guy like that all the time right away. So you got to give it time. And also, they have other arms. They have all these plethora of arms. To use that adjective once again, but they do. They have a plethora of arms in their farm system currently. You have Franklin Perez. They got in the Justin Verlander deal with the Astros last year. You have Matt Manning, Alex Faedo, Bo Burrows, all these different names. Now Casey Mize, all of these starting pitching prospects too. Guys that probably will amount to something at the major league level, at least as bullpen arms. So let's not freak out about Casey Mize not being great right away here and give him time, not rush him to the bigs. And the Tigers, you can't expect the Tigers to rush him to the bigs. And like I said, let's be optimistic, let's be positive here and reflect upon all the great Tigers arms in their farm system currently that can become something in the future, including Casey Mize. And that's why I brought up all those other different arms too, because that's a reason to be positive about the Tigers moving forward and about this rebuild rebuild and what Al Avila has done thus far with this rebuild too.
The name I was looking for was Brady Singer.
From Florida, Brady Singer.
Everyone's
who
like,
outdueled them recently too. They played each other recently in the SEC competition towards the end of the season, and that's why people have brought up Brady Singer being better, the guy they should have drafted, and he was projected at one point to go number one. Casey Mize was not even in the discussion, from my knowledge. Brady Singer was the guy that we talked about last year during the wintertime, if you remember right. So I thought he was going to be selected. Then I kind of lost my interest in the draft for a little bit, and then Casey Mize rose up and took the spotlight and limelight from Brady Singer. He was taken number one, and once again, let's not freak out. Let's relax about Casey Mize, and let's still believe that he can become something of high quality and a frontline starting arm in the Tigers rotation one day. And guess what? We don't need that to happen in 2018 or even 2019, maybe in 2020, and maybe that is a season, guys, all you Tigers fans out there, for when the Tigers will be relevant once again.
All right, you wanted to peek into the series versus the Twins. 3 games at home after a day off, a much-needed day off. It's going to be a fun time. I do think that the Tigers can be competitive. They have played a lot of good baseball at home, and I think that the day off will do the Tigers well. You could sense a little bit that they were a little bit sloppy heading into the last couple of series, some mental mistakes, defensive lapses, making mistakes on the base pads, and I think the day off will help everybody. I'm thinking 2 out of 3 wins this week.
I'm going to say, because I said 2 out of 3 last week in Beantown for the Tigers, and I was wrong. I'm going to say, how about 1 out of 3 against the Twins, even though the Tigers have thrived thus far at home, as you noted, and the Twins have not been thriving as a ball club at all thus far this season. 28-34, Tigers 31-36, meaning the Tigers have played more games up to this point in the season, so maybe they're going to wear down a little bit. The Twins have played less games. I'm really reaching here for a reason for the Twins to win the series, but I am going to say the Twins win this series and start playing better ball overall-wise, because on paper, they're a better ball club. They came into the season, Doc, as you and I know and have harped upon in the past on Tigers Talk, as the team projected to finish in second place in the American League Central Division. They are in third place behind the Tigers. Los Tigres of all teams. Really? I mean, you got to be kidding me about these Twinkies. And, I mean, how much they have really failed to live up to expectations thus far. And, you know, one other thing I wanted to get into a little bit here, trade bait, guys that are trade pieces, and you had mentioned Mike Fiers, Francisco Liriano, maybe Matthew Boyd, probably the biggest tradable asset right now among their starting pitchers, at least, and I think from their pitching staff collectively. And, I mean, let's do a big Vito's over-under about the chances of these guys being dealt. Starting with Matthew Boyd. What do you think? Over. Under? I'm going to say over-under 50%, though.
Over
50%. Easily, too, you think?
60% chance he's gone.
Okay, how about Mike Fiers?
Way over. I think that he's going to do some things, and he can be a solid piece that can get you something. I think he's gone too.
Frankie Liriano.
That's going to be a little bit tougher. Depending on his recent performances, I would say it's a push. Right around 50% chance. I do think that that's the guy that you initially thought of would be somebody that could be traded, but remember now, injuries.
Now he's been hurt. He's old.
That's the problem.
Less effective of late. And guess what? His fielding independent pitching mark is high. Above 4 and closer to 5 than to 4, which is not good for a guy of his age.
What always makes everybody leery is what they offer. And so I
know
what
are you going to get? You're going to get crap in return anyways, and people are going to complain.
Right.
So it's like they don't care about Tigers fans and what we think, obviously, because they made all those deals last year, too, and didn't care about our feelings and opinions. So they might still deal them, but guess what? You're not going to get a great return for Francisco Liriano because he's 30+, and he's not that effective anymore. Can't be relied upon as a steady, even fifth starter, a guy that can go for you every fifth day and go 5 or 6, and I'm saying at least 5, and a guy that can allow 2 earned runs or less in those 5 innings. So I don't think you get anything of worth for Francisco Liriano. Now, will they deal him? Perhaps. And I'm going to place the odds of it actually slightly above 50%. And with that being said, one other guy, Michael Fulmer, a guy of note that has been talked about in the past for being traded. And I don't think he's as high of a trade candidate for the Tigers anymore because of his struggles this season. Obviously, he's still young, cheap, so somebody would deal for him. But I think the plethora of prospects, to use that adjective once again, that they could get in return for Michael Fulmer right now wouldn't be as high caliber of prospects. So I think it actually is right now for Michael Fulmer being dealt. The odds of it happening, playing big Vito's over-under, are below 50%. How about for you, Doc? Over or under 50%, the odds of Michael Fulmer being dealt by the time of that July 31 non-waiver trade deadline?
Under. I just think that you got to find consistency. I don't think that the phones will stop ringing. I just don't think the offer will be fair enough.
How about this for Mike Fiers? A little Vito's notebook to end this week's edition of Tigers Talk. He has been on fire lately, you could say. Over his last 3 outings, the 32-year-old right-hander has posted a 1.96 earned run average in 18 and a third innings. And according to BaseballReference.com, through 12 starts on the season, his wins above replacement total stands at .9, nearly 1. And if the season ended today, Doc, and everybody out there, it would be his highest single-season WAR since recording 2 WAR in 2015 in time spent with the Milwaukee Brewers and the Houston Astros, the defending World Series champion, Houston Astros. And his current WAR this season of .9, according to BaseballReference.com, that is, once again, is also better than the WAR he's posted the past 2 seasons combined. Not just one of the two, or 2017 or 2016. I'm saying the past 2 seasons combined. His WAR in those past 2 seasons combined, Doc, listen to this, how bad, how smelly it was. Negative .3 in 60 games pitched, including 58 games as a starting pitcher with the Astros. That tells me right there, screams at me that he wasn't very effective whatsoever the past 2 years as a starting arm and as a big league pitcher in totality. This year, a lot better, and that's why he's tradable. But once again, you got to watch out for his FIP. It's above 4, and when that's the case, that stands out to these fellow major league clubs and front office executives, and it's a reason why a guy that is 32 years old already and doesn't throw very hard on the radar gun, it's a reason or a couple of reasons why. Well, guess what? Mike Fiers might not be as highly valuable of a trade candidate as that July 31 non-waiver trade deadline does near.
One final story, biggest story in baseball. Do you think Shohei Ohtani is gone? Do you think that the rumors are true that he blew out his arm and that he might not pitch for this season and even 2019? Are you concerned at all about that?
Yeah, I would say so, because we're losing out on a two-way star that was like the current Babe Ruth, right? The present-day Babe Ruth, and now we're losing out on a Babe Ruth-type impact player. Well, guess what? I'm losing out too, and all of us as baseball fans are losing out on the stud that was, and maybe still will be in the future, but maybe past 2019, and that is Shohei Ohtani. So I could see it because of the UCL tear, and now requiring Tommy John surgery is what they're saying, and when Tommy John surgery is mentioned, you know it's catastrophic of an injury, and you know that a lot of time will be missed. Thus, I think you have to say, or subsequently, I think you have to say that he's more than likely to miss all of 2019, which means we will have to miss out on this guy until 2020 at this point. That is just devastating, in my opinion, as a baseball fan.
It's a weird story because the Angels have come out and denied it fully, saying that he even could come back and be a hitter at the end of this year.
Didn't they say like he needed 3 weeks or 3 months? I mean, it's like where he could come back at least this season at some point as a DH once again. But the thing is, do you now eliminate one of the 2 things that he does, as in eliminating him as a pitcher? Do you just force him to be a DH all the time now because of his arm troubles? What do you think about that possibility?
Man, it's unfortunate because you heard rumblings maybe that his arm had some issues, and
his motion in which he threw was always wild or dangerous and susceptible to maybe a severe injury like this. And now I guess it's coming to fruition here, Doc. Unfortunately,
bad news because he was a guy that we just saw here in Detroit. Kind of had a little bit of buzz surrounding him. It's an unfortunate story, and one in which I know that the Tommy John surgery is more common. You just hope that he comes back and is the sensation that he was, because he was starting to build a nice reputation for himself, and now it's cut short again because of the situation. And probably, I would say, this might be the beginning of the end of him as a pitcher.
Yeah, do you think he's done as a pitcher? I mean, that's my question, too. Do you think he just becomes a full-time DH moving forward when he does return from this injury?
I don't know if he'll be a full-time DH, but I do think that maybe he'll find a spot that he can actually play and get out there and be contributing every single day. That's what I think players want. I don't think a young athlete wants to be a DH, just bat all the time. I don't think he'd come over here for that. I think most major league players want to get out on the field. You feel like you're more part of the game, you're more impactful, and so I know he's a pitcher, but I wonder if he would come back and consider maybe being an outfielder.
I think the outfield, yeah. Well, you know what? To get the most bang for your buck, guess what? Ball players and their agents care about that, too.
Yeah.
And when you're only a DH, you don't get paid as handsomely. So if he wants to get paid as handsomely as possible for being a supremely talented major league slugger, well, guess what? He's not going to just be a full-time DH. So there is that factor as well to bring up regarding what he does moving forward when he does return from this injury, which has struck way too many youth ball players, too. We read up on a story recently. There is Dr. Tommy John, the son of Tommy John, who is now a doctor and deals with these injuries, which his dad made known through the surgery, which, he had first, and he became famous because of the injury, and then he pitched all those innings and games after undergoing what is now known as Tommy John surgery. And his son is a doctor, and he has said himself, had a book that just came out, I believe, on June 5th, about how these young ball players who are 14 and under are undergoing Tommy John surgery at catastrophic rates. And that's just not cool. It's unfortunate. And it's a dilemma in baseball, youth baseball nowadays, which I never knew about until I saw this report about these young ball players. And so many of them having to undergo Tommy John surgery, thus stunting their growth. It's like, why are these guys undergoing this surgery as much at such young ages, too?
This will be a topic that we can table now, but it will be brought up again. We have an opportunity, hopefully, maybe as a tease, we will maybe have a solid interview in the week or two, looking at Tommy John surgery, youth sports, and things like that. But great episode of Tigers Talk. Just flew by, man. I know we had a fun pre-show meeting this week. Final story, I had a chance to track down and meet Al Avila.
Yes, I know you wanted to speak about this to show off to everybody out there listening in.
And the moral of the story is have courage. Don't be shy. I just seen him in the parking lot, leaving Comerica Park. We stayed about an hour after the game. We talked a little bit, ate more free popcorn.
There you go. You love that free popcorn.
We were the last people to leave the suites. You get about 30, 40 minutes. All the kids ran the bases.
Cool. And Zuzu got to run the bases then, right?
No, we stood up. We stayed in the suite.
Okay.
Other kids, that's why the ballpark stayed open.
Yeah.
And so we stayed and chatted and allowed him to stay even more. And then all of a sudden I see this figure and I'm like, it's Al Avila. And he was like maybe 100 feet in front of me, and I'm like, Mr. Avila. He turns around. He's, I think, with his daughter or a relative, and I said, can I just have a minute of your time, sir? He comes back, and I go, hey, this is my nephew, huge fan, and today's his birthday, and I was just fluid, and I was confident, and I said he would really appreciate it if you could, maybe have a picture, and he was really cordial, gave us a picture, and it wasn't all about me. Didn't bring up the podcast.
Not this time, at least.
Didn't bring up how,
We've called 2,000 times already to try to get him on this podcast, right?
Do you remember when we tried to fakely call his office? Do you remember that?
Do you remember the one? Yeah, I remember a time where we were in the car together. You were driving me home, and we made a call, too. So maybe another time I'm thinking of. But I know we've called him countless times at this point. A lot of on your part.
Not to reveal secrets, but similar to my meeting with Karan Higdon, there are a lot of people, like third and fourth hand, that I know Al Avila and are close to him. So it's an opportunity where we're not going up the chain of command. We're not going through PR.
We can't really get through that.
Nope. We're going right to the source. I know people who know the general manager of the Detroit Tigers, and we're going to, just like I love, we're not going through the proper channels. We're going to bum rush this thing. And that's what we're doing. That's the best way to do it. There are, literally, like in life, the classic game, 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. Right now, in terms of the podcast, it's basically 2 or 3 degrees between me and big prominent people. And I didn't know that. It's just, I've been listening more in conversations, being more invested, and realizing, I'm like, oh, this person knows this person knows Mr. Al Avila. I'm like, okay. And now I'm like, can you drop the line and hint that, hey, Mr. John Macaroon does.
We do a podcast here in Sterling Heights, not too far from your offices downtown Detroit Comerica Park, right?
So I am working the magic, Vito, and that's what I'm telling you. I'm hitting the pavement, and like I said, stay tuned to this week's Two Bad Hombres. You're going to like it because there's now a renewed fire for me to get you paid even more. Because,
good God, I need the money, man, more than ever before, too. With tax season just hitting me.
I saw what you wore to a wedding.
Oh, you loved it. I loved it. Bow tie, baby. Go check out the photos. I know you had to tweet them out, and you did.
Full recap, blame Nick Schmiegel. I asked him permission. I asked you didn't answer, which was weird.
Well, it's my birthday. Really? I got to look at my text to get about my dress being and attire being put on Twitter? And by you? Really? Come on, man.
I got permission from Nick. He's like,
luckily you did.
He's like, post that ass. And I'm like, you got it. And I did. And,
you did. You probably did like the second after.
Stay tuned for the review. Follow us on our network at Detroit Podcast. Follow Vito at Vito Jerome. Stay tuned for the Two Bad Hombres podcast this week. It's going to be very funny. And we'll have a full review and breakdown of Vito at a wedding and what the hell he was wearing. Let's just say, you're not going to want to miss it. Stay tuned, and thank you for tuning into all the shows on the network.
And thank you, Alicia Keys. The Tigers keep on falling.
Out of the standings.
Right?
Let's get
out of second place, probably. Adios.